hard with your example and leadership so that that can happen. You addressed most of the issues that I have in my questions, but some of them probably need to be a little bit more detailed, and we would like to hear from you in more specific around certain topics. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Fire away.
Okay. So I have one first question. You mentioned in your presentation that Nevada has a very strict regulation that has been built over the years. And I wanted to ask you, what are the main pillars of that regulation that we should take in mind while regulating the Latin American market?
A Nevada gaming license is a privilege, not a right. We put anyone who comes for a license in Nevada, operator, technology provider, others who key employees, suitability, all of those things are important. Some of our investigations take years to complete. Some people are very complex, and it doesn't matter if you're small or large, you go through the same background check. They make sure that the people you've associated with since you were in middle school, it's an exhaustive process. Many people don't enjoy it. They say thank you afterwards because they have their whole life in one folder and all their financial records. But it's, character matters, who you bank with matters, the source of capital matters, and we will only provide a license to someone who can demonstrate a worthiness to it. And it doesn't stop at licensing. It continues. Oversight, if there's an issue or a problem, see something, say something, they must self-report to the Nevada Gaming Control Board and ultimately to the Gaming Commission for any enforcement actions. But the risks to not doing so are profound. It's the loss of a gaming license, whether you're a multi-billion-dollar property or a worker, dealing blackjack on the floor. You must comply and do it perfectly. We understand it's not always going to be perfect, and we can be very, kind and accommodative, but there needs to be a path to success and remediation, or you lose your license.
Thank you, Brian. That was very, very interesting and very clear. During the last years, in Colombia and many other countries around the world, the issue of taxation and the increase of taxation in our business, in the gambling business, in the gaming business, has been growing and growing. In our case, we had a recent decision by the government to fund specific needs of the country using money from the gaming industry. What is the breaking point where you consider that taxing goes beyond what the industry can take care of and leads the market to illegality? Do you have a thought on that?
I've already said, every jurisdiction will have different laws and policies and needs and government roles. So again, one size does not fit all. And for a guy from Nevada coming to Latin America saying how to do things, I'm not that arrogant. High level, which I think does address your question, is, if you start, taxation needs to be fair, it needs to be predictable, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be sustained. Companies will not spend millions. In my case in Las Vegas, our newest casino in Las Vegas cost $4.5 billion. MGM is building in Osaka, Japan, and it's almost a $10 billion project. They need to know that the capital that they deploy and invest for the next 20 to 40 years is going to be stable. But that taxation rate, so I answered a little bit of a different question, but the taxation rate needs to work. When will people invest in a facility, in people, in training, in marketing, versus not? And so it needs to be clear that they're happy to pay their taxes, they're happy to comply, they're happy to do the licensing requirements going forward and paying their taxes. But if that suddenly changes to a point where it's not profitable, then that's when illegal gaming is going to thrive, because the bad guys will take advantage of that. People don't go into business to lose money, so it's only a period of time. And even if something's temporary, as a guy who, I'm an investment banker, so I come from a conservative fiscal background, but being treasurer of Nevada and understanding the money, it's very hard once you put on a tax to take it back, because you rely on that money. So it just needs to be very carefully thought out. It can't be an extraction, because if taxation becomes too high to operate successfully, the bad guys are going to win at the end of the day. Good guys are not going to continue making that investment of capital, and and that revenue is temporary. It cannot be sustained going forward.
Let me ask you something, and I know you just said that each country has different regulation and different economic conditions, but what is taxation like in Las Vegas or in Nevada? What is the,
I had this dinner conversation last night with friends who informed me of some of the local tax rates and a temporary rate. And I believe here in Colombia, just because I know this from conversation here in Cartagena, is perhaps with the temporary around 32%. In Nevada, for many years, with no prospect of really changing it, and with COVID, with other things going on in the world, it is 6.75% gross gaming tax rate. So if I'm a CFO of a company, if I'm a investor, if I'm MGM, Caesars, Resorts World International, I can pencil that in, I can pro forma it out, and I can invest billions of dollars knowing that that is my ramp on the government obligation and taxation side.
It's a huge difference, and what we are seeing is that international investors are very hesitant about investing in Colombia with this new condition.
And it's not just gaming. Any business. If I'm a manufacturer, if I'm a pharmaceutical company, I need predictability. I need political stability. I need a constant, angle here for me to make those kind of capital decisions. Otherwise, you're encouraging, again, bad actors to engage, because they don't have to pay taxes, they don't have to comply, they don't have to obey laws, they don't have to pay taxes. You're just opening the door for activities that you don't want.
Right. I have one question that probably is around the mind of many people here. During the recent years, we are observing the rise of something called gambling activity prediction market, the prediction market. And here it's a big issue because it's been around the topic of politics. We have had activity of prediction market companies, from our perspective, gambling in politics or doing what we do, but more related to politics. I know it's a big issue for many regulators around the world, and it has been something that our associations have been dealing with lately, establishing very strong positions about it. And I would really like to hear your opinion on this.
That's a great question. How many people in this room think about prediction markets and are worried about them and how they're evolving? Can you just raise your hand if it's relevant? Those of you, I was hoping for more hands, but I guarantee you that if I ask this question in 6 months or a year, most of this room will be raising their hands. Prediction markets are something that have been around for a long time, for predicting weather or outcome of politics or how long somebody is alive. Some of it is inappropriate, some of it is just random, but there's been this creep into sports betting, which is significant. So, one of the largest companies in the United States engaged in prediction markets, 90% of their revenue comes from what you and I would all consider to be a sports bet. And they argue that they come under a national regulatory scheme Commodity Future Trading Commission. So they're not saying it's a wager. They're not saying it's a bet. They're saying it's an investment into a contract based on a specific outcome. You know, that's when words just get in the way of what you know is right and what is wrong, and has become an issue because the prediction markets currently in the United States, they are not regulated by the states. So Nevada, they argue, has no jurisdiction. They don't worry, and we haven't talked about this today very much, but they can't enforce underage gambling, problem gambling, self-exclusion from gambling, geolocation of where gambling is taking place. All of the things, you know, much less compliant and paying taxes and, you know, all of the other things. So how am I, you know, if I'm a BetMGM or Caesars Sportsbook or FanDuel or DraftKings, if those names are familiar to you, they comply with state laws and they do all of the things we just talked about. But you can't compete with an actor that's not concerned or needing to fund to pay those kind of things. So it's a crescendo. In Nevada, it is becoming a very large and complex and I'll say agitated legal situation. It's now in the federal court system in Nevada. It's in the federal court system in other states in the country that are part of different federal court districts. And we all believe it'll ultimately go to the Nevada, to the US Supreme Court for ultimate adjudication. There's action in Congress that's actually bipartisan. Nothing in Washington, DC is bipartisan. This happens to be gaining some traction, but it's a big deal, and it should be a big deal to people here in this room. Do I care about the outcome on betting on an election or something? That's hard for me. But the sports betting, the traditional things that we do as regulators, I have a big problem. And so this will be resolved as it will be. If the prediction markets wanted to subject themselves to governance and regulators, I welcome them and into the family of good actors in the gaming area, and we can do that. But so far, they're not interested. And again, that's why we're in the courtroom. But IAGR, I'm staying on message here, Lima, Peru, October 19 to 22, IAGR has provided something called an amicus brief to these legal proceedings in the United States. So essentially, the world's regulators are saying to the US courts, this is a big deal. This needs not to be happening. We care, we're engaged, and we're watching. So hopefully, as the courts make these determinations, there'll be a compelling story, but to have a whole, as I said, my theme today is it's all international. We're all in this together. The way our smartphones work and bad actors and banking wires and how money's, we're in this together. And this is one of the demonstrations of the value of IAGR. If you have the global gaming community coming here to Colombia or Argentina or whatever, there's an issue that is compelling to other regulators around the world, you've got a team behind you, and I think that's important. That was a long answer, but it was important.
That was a good answer because it's a big topic right now, and we have, many of us have an interest around it. I think this is a good time to open, and in relation to this particular topic, to see if somebody in the audience has a question for Brian around the topic of, that he just addressed on predictions. I don't know if somebody has a particular interest.
Translation services will be provided to me.
Sí, tenemos traductor. Si alguien quiere hacer una pregunta a Brian relacionada con el tema de predicciones o con cualquiera de los temas que acaba de presentar. Okay, we have a question over there.
I owe you a beverage service. Thank you for raising your hand.
I'm working in the night of helping manufacturers to become certified manufacturers in different jurisdictions. One question is, because I'm seeing in different jurisdictions that some of them have the figure of the licensed manufacturer. In other jurisdictions, there is no such registry from the regulator to become a manufacturer.
Okay.
So,
Yo creo que está un poco difícil escucharte. ¿Por qué no haces la pregunta en español para que el traductor se la traduzca
claro.
a Brian? Creo que funciona mejor.
okay. En diferentes jurisdicciones vemos que existe la figura legal del fabricante licenciado. ¿Qué quiere decir? Que para vender en una jurisdicción hay que estar en un registro. En Nevada existe ese registro y en otras jurisdicciones no existe ese registro, más allá de las certificaciones de los productos. Quería saber qué beneficio trae la existencia de la figura del fabricante registrado en las jurisdicciones que lo tienen en comparación con las que no lo tienen.
Okay, let me see if I got this one and make a short resume. He's saying that in the Nevada regulation, you have to be registered as a manufacturer and able to sell your products within the territory of Nevada. And he's saying that in some jurisdictions, they do not have that type of registration, and but you have to go through certifications of labs and things like that in able to operate or sell your products. He wants to know what is the purpose of that registration in Las Vegas.
It's a wonderful question, especially at a GATT conference. So, operators here are always interested. As I said earlier, technology is developing faster than most individual regulatory bodies can handle. Nevada actually has an extraordinary technology lab. It's almost like a James Bond movie. You walk in, they have different machines taken apart, and they look like people. I mean, it's fascinating, but most jurisdictions don't have that. And so, but we, especially with the software and the manipulation and the AI, it's very important for us to know that these machines and the software are being fair to the player, that the algorithms are not manipulating the people in ways that are unhealthy, and so we can do that. But we work with companies like GLI, we work with other technology labs in other countries and other states. So, again, I don't say this out of arrogance, but if Nevada Technology Division says this machine, the software is good, most jurisdictions will automatically say it's good too. Sometimes technology can be certified in many, many places, but not yet in Nevada because it's not up to the standards that we believe. But as technology grows, we need to be growing with it. We need to stay in front of it. We need to be in a dialogue with it because we want the technology companies, operators to thrive. We want them to make money. We want them to provide extraordinary experiences, but it's got to be done in a way that's healthy, that's fair, and it's transparent. And so that's how we engage with the different industry. And sometimes there's always a complaint. You develop a new game, and it takes 6 months or a year to get approval in the state of Nevada. I know that's a problem. Nevada knows that's a problem. So we're trying to invest the resources in people. It's government. There's never enough people to do the jobs you need to do, but we are making a concerted effort to make sure that we can keep up with the pace of approving the technology that's constantly coming at us every day, and globally so.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Does that answer your question? Thank you. We have time for one more question, and then our time is up, unfortunately. So we have time for one more question. Anybody? Oh, we have two people here. Sir?
Buen día. Respecto a los prediction markets, ¿tienen una definición bien clara y con buen respaldo jurídico y técnico para decir que son mercados de apuestas?
You got that one? He wants to know about the predictions market, about your legal perspective of why they are or are not gambling activities.
And I hate saying this, but my views are my own. I'm not representing the Nevada Gaming Commission. I may have to make some decisions, for or against, these industries. But if you go to a prediction market website and you see the products that are offered, the types of wagers offered, again, some of them are almost all sport or exclusively sport. I think it's clear what it's doing. If it's providing contracts based as investments on the outcome of the May presidential election in Peru, that's harder for me to try to get my hands around. If people want to do those kind of things, I'm not sure that's what a gaming regulator is. I mean, that's just speculation. It's not, it's just hard to get handled. So I'm happy if we can just really address the sports and whether it's appropriate for prediction companies to offer wagers on, how long the war lasts or what color, how many bottles of water are in this room. I mean, those are things that I think are silly, but people want to do it. I think that's fine, but that's not the space that is most important to this regulator. It's when it starts really, overcoming and affecting the things in Nevada. So, public information. 90% of one of the large companies in the prediction market is sports related. The Super Bowl in the U.S., big event, global event. It was reported to have billions of new bets, wagers, investments made on their platform. In Las Vegas, the Super Bowl betting handle actually went down, which is counterintuitive. So, are they affecting each other? I don't know, but there may well be a correlation there.
Okay, thank you. So just to summarize that, your big concern is about sports betting through this type of activity, and when it relates to politics or other events, you do not see it as...
My job as a regulator, and I think regulators in this room, is to regulate those activities that come under our purview, and sports betting is absolutely one of those. How people vote on the weather today or political outcome, I think those are decisions made for government, legislature, politicians. They can decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But as it relates to what is currently my responsibility, very clearly, sports betting being one, then I do care on the outcome, and I would rather make sure it's fair for all of the people doing it right and not making special accommodations, especially when the people we serve, the bettors, the people who engage in this, they have no recourse. There's no problem gambling. There's none of the traditional safeguards in place for the prediction market activity.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Our time is up now, so I'm sorry we don't have...
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for your help.
Eso, muchísimas gracias ahí para la foto, para el registro de este momento tan importante.